The morning of my birthday, I walked into Bright Path Creative Agency feeling hopeful. I wasn't expecting streamers or cake. But after 3 years of pouring my heart into this place, I thought maybe someone would at least say, "Happy birthday," maybe even a card on my desk. Instead, I got an email. "Please meet in conference room 2B at 10 a.m. Mandatory." No subject line, no explanation. Just a sinking feeling settling deep in my gut. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a quick project meeting, maybe even a promotion talk. I smoothed down my jacket, tucked my hair behind my ear, and walked, in with a small smile. Waiting inside were Madison Clark from HR and Mr. Ellis, my manager. Neither looked me in the eye. There were no congratulations, no warm smiles, only a single printed document resting between them. Madison cleared her throat. "Due to necessary budget cuts," she said, "Bright Path has made the difficult decision to eliminate your position, effective immediately." I blinked. For a second, the words didn't even register. Birthday, budget cuts, eliminated. They slid the papers across the table. A severance package, a non-disclosure agreement, a polite threat. Sign quietly, leave quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply stood, thanked them for the opportunity, and packed up 3 years of loyalty into a cardboard box. No goodbyes, no handshakes, just a silent walk to the elevator, carrying the weight of a birthday I would never forget. An hour later, sitting numbly in my car, I refreshed the Bright Path job board out of habit. There it was, my job, reposted, same title, same description, same responsibilities. Budget cuts. No, just replaced. And that was the moment I realized. They hadn't just fired me. They had set something in motion they couldn't take back. I still remember the day I got the call from Bright Path Creative Agency, a small but rising firm, scrappy, ambitious, full of dreams bigger than their conference rooms. "We love your portfolio," Mr. Ellis had said on the phone. "We're looking for someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty and build something with us." I didn't even hesitate. I packed up my tiny apartment, moved across the state line, and dove in head first. It wasn't glamorous. Our office windows rattled when trucks drove by. The coffee machine broke every other week. Sometimes we ran client pitches out of cafes when the electricity went out. But none of that mattered, because I believed in the work. I believed in the people. And slowly, piece by piece, I helped build Bright Path into something bigger than it had ever been. I stayed late when deadlines loomed, polishing presentation decks until my eyes blurred. I flew cross-country on red-eye flights just to deliver pitches in person, when video calls would have been easier. I skipped my sister's engagement party because a major client demanded a last-minute campaign overhaul. I spent the night in a hospital waiting room with my laptop balanced on my knees while my mother recovered from surgery, finishing a product launch because I didn't want to let the team down. No one asked me to make those sacrifices. I gave them freely, because I thought I was building something that would matter. Something that would last. There were small victories along the way. The first national brand we landed. I still remember the champagne toast. The late-night brainstorming sessions that ended with wild laughter and crazy ideas that somehow worked. The client who mailed me a handwritten note just to say, "You made us feel seen." Those moments kept me going, made me believe that loyalty would be repaid, that hard work, when given without expectation, would someday be recognized. Bright Path wasn't just my job. It was my second home. At least that's what I told myself, over and over. Especially on the lonely nights when the sacrifices weighed a little heavier than the victories. This year, this birthday, felt different. For the first time, I let myself believe that maybe it was my turn. My turn to be recognized. My turn to step into leadership. My turn to stop merely surviving and start thriving. I had just completed a year-long rebranding project that had doubled our biggest client's revenue. I had trained 2 junior designers who were now thriving. I had negotiated a partnership deal that the senior team had been chasing unsuccessfully for 3 years. I had done everything they asked, and more. And I had done it quietly, without needing the spotlight. Surely, I thought, surely this was the year they would see it. Surely, this was the year they would see me. When I walked into Brightpath that morning, birthday card tucked into my bag, just in case someone thought to hand it back to me. I wasn't expecting balloons or a cake. I wasn't even expecting a grand gesture, just maybe a smile, maybe a small acknowledgement, maybe a sign that all those invisible sacrifices hadn't been invisible after all. Instead, I got an email. Conference room 2B, mandatory, 10 a.m. sharp, and I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it was probably a project meeting. I told myself, maybe today really will be a good day. I didn't know that within the next hour, the place I had poured my soul into would show me exactly how little all those sacrifices had ever mattered. The conference room smelled faintly of stale coffee and new carpet. Sunlight filtered through the half-closed blinds, catching the dust floating in the air. It was a small detail, but somehow, I noticed everything that morning. Madison Clark sat on one side of the table, a neatly stacked folder in front of her. Mr. Ellis perched stiffly, on the other, avoiding my eyes, tapping a pen against the edge of his notebook. Neither of them smiled. Neither said, "Happy birthday." I slid into the chair across from them, my heart already thudding against my ribs, though I didn't know why yet. "Not really." "Claire," Madison began, her voice professional, clipped. "First, we want to thank you for your contributions to Brightpath. You've been an important part of our growth." I waited for the but, waited for the other shoe to drop. "Unfortunately," she continued, "due to necessary budget adjustments, we are forced to eliminate your position, effective immediately." She slid the folder across the table. It landed with a soft thud. Inside, a severance agreement, a non-disclosure contract, a resignation letter already drafted for me. For a moment, I just stared at it. Budget cuts. On my birthday, after 3 years of never saying no, after sacrificing holidays, family, health, budget, cuts. I looked up, finally meeting Mr. Ellis's eyes. He flinched slightly, a small, involuntary movement, like a man ashamed to be caught stealing. But he said nothing. Madison said everything for him. "If you choose to accept the severance package," she said, "we'd appreciate your signature today so we can process everything smoothly, so we can erase you quickly, so we can make you disappear neatly, so we can pretend you were never here." I felt the burning behind my eyes, the tightening in my throat, the screaming injustice clawing to be let out. But I swallowed it down. No tears. No begging. No scenes. Not for them. I picked up the pen, signed my name with a hand steadier than I felt, placed the folder back on the table, and stood. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, my voice calm, because if I let it break, I wasn't sure I'd ever recover. Madison nodded stiffly. Mr. Ellis muttered something. Maybe good luck. Maybe nothing at all. I walked out without a word, without looking back. Packing my desk felt surreal. Colleagues, people I had mentored, laughed with, saved at the last minute more times than I could count, suddenly found their monitors fascinating. A few shot me guilty glances. One whispered, "I'm so sorry," but didn't step closer. No one asked what happened. No one fought for me. And maybe that was the hardest part. Not the betrayal from management, but the quiet abandonment from everyone else. I placed the last of my things into a cardboard box, a worn notebook, a photo of my dog, a framed thank you card from a client, and hugged it against my chest. One foot in front of the other, I walked past the break room where I had once organized surprise birthday lunches for others. Walked past the conference room where I had pitched million-dollar campaigns. Walked past the front desk where I had once stood proudly in the first week, signing my new hire forms with a spark of hope in my chest. And out the door. No applause. No handshakes. No goodbye party. Just the hollow thud of the glass door closing behind me. It wasn't until I reached my car that I let myself breathe. The box sat on the passenger seat like a grave marker. I sat still, hands gripping the steering wheel, as the reality sank deeper into my bones. 3 years. Gone. Not because I failed. Not because I wasn't enough, but because it was easier to replace me than to reward me. Absent-mindedly, I pulled out my phone. Maybe part of me still hoped, foolishly, that there would be a follow-up email, a reconsideration, an apology. Instead, what I found made my heart lurch. BrightPath's public job board. New listing, posted less than an hour ago. Senior campaign manager, immediate hire needed. Same title. Same job description. Same responsibilities. No mention of budget cuts. No mention of restructuring, just my job. Open to the highest bidder. Cheaper. Easier. Quieter. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. They hadn't eliminated my position. They had eliminated me on my birthday, after everything I gave. And in that moment, sitting in my car, the box of my work life sitting heavy beside me, I understood something crystal clear. This wasn't about performance. It wasn't about budgets. It was about convenience, about loyalty being a one-way street. And they had made one mistake, a mistake they would soon regret. Because some endings are only beginnings in disguise, and some losses come back to haunt those who caused them. The first few days felt like falling through empty space. No meetings to prep for. No deadlines pressing, down on my shoulders. No endless stream of client emails buzzing my phone awake at midnight. At first, it was almost surreal. A hollow, echoing silence that stretched out into every corner of my tiny apartment. I woke up early out of habit, half-dressed for work before remembering. There was nowhere to go. I kept thinking, maybe they'll call. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone will realize this isn't fair. But the phone stayed silent. And somewhere deep down, I knew no apology was coming. On the third day, I packed the BrightPath branded notebooks, pens, and water bottles into a storage box. It was harder than I expected. Each item was a small thread tied to a version of me that still believed loyalty guaranteed protection. I thought about the nights I had sat at my desk until the cleaning crew turned off the lights. About the projects I had rescued at the last minute. About the holidays missed, the family dinners cut short, the birthdays postponed, all given freely, all forgotten easily. Grief has stages, they say, but in those first weeks, it didn't feel like stages. It felt like layers, sadness, anger, shame, confusion, folded tightly over each other. Was I naive? Was I foolish for believing loyalty mattered? Had I missed the warning signs? The questions circled endlessly. Some mornings, getting out of bed felt heavier than it should have. Some nights, I replayed the meeting in the conference room like a movie stuck on a cruel loop. Every word, every silence, every small betrayal. But pain has a way of carving space inside you. Space where something new can grow. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I started breathing deeper. Started seeing beyond the four walls of the office I had once called home. I updated my portfolio. Not because I felt ready, but because doing something, anything, felt better than doing nothing. I reached out to old contacts. Not for favors, just for conversations, for reminders that the world outside Bright Path still existed, and somewhere between polishing resumes and reintroducing myself to forgotten hobbies, I stumbled across a simple truth. Loyalty isn't measured in years, it's measured in moments. And when it had mattered most, in that cold conference room, on my birthday, Bright Path had failed every measure. They hadn't valued my loyalty. They had only valued my silence, my willingness to stay small and compliant and unseen. And once I stopped offering that, I stopped being useful to them. It was a bitter realization, but strangely, it was freeing too. Because if their approval was so easily withdrawn, then maybe, just maybe, I had been giving too much power to people who never deserved it in the first place. Maybe losing them wasn't losing at all. Maybe it was just clearing the way for something better. One evening, as the sun dipped low and warm behind the city skyline, I closed my laptop, stood by the window, and whispered to myself, "You didn't lose your worth. You just lost the place that refused to see it." And for the first time in a long time, the thought didn't sting. It soothed. Because sometimes survival isn't loud. It's quiet. It's steady. It's a decision made in the stillness, to believe in yourself when no one else does. And that quiet decision, it changes everything. Didn't plan revenge. I didn't spend sleepless nights crafting schemes or plotting payback. I simply moved forward. Quietly. Steadily. Because when people show you what they truly value, you stop giving them free pieces of yourself. You stop waiting for them to realize what they lost. You let the truth do the work for you. A few weeks after, I left Bright Path. I got a call from Natalie, a former client I had managed during my last year there. "Hey Claire, we heard you left," she said, her voice cautious, almost disbelieving. "We didn't even get notified. Suddenly we were assigned. Someone knew. What happened?" I hesitated for a moment. Telling the whole story felt messy, petty. So I said the only thing that mattered. It wasn't my decision. There was a long pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "We've been having issues with deliverables," she said. "Deadlines missed, proposals sloppy. It's not the same." Over the next few days, more messages trickled in. Quiet emails, careful texts, questions asked in cautious tones. What happened to the leadership at Bright Path? Why did the new campaign fall apart? Why were familiar faces disappearing from client calls? From what I heard through the grapevine, the answer was simple. The heart of the team, the people who cared, who stayed late, who gave more than they had started leaving, one by one, quietly, without fanfare. The replacements, cheaper, less experienced, less invested, and it showed. It wasn't just clients who noticed. Recruiters from the industry started whispering, "Be careful working with Bright Path. Something's going on there. Management is unstable. Projects are getting messy. Deals slipped through their fingers. Clients pulled contracts mid-project. Deadlines that had once been celebrated were now sources of embarrassment." One afternoon, while scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw it. A short, polite post from Bright Path's CEO. After thoughtful consideration, Bright Path Creative Agency is restructuring to better serve our evolving client. Bazi, we appreciate your support during this transition. Restructuring ... corporate language for we're losing people. We're losing clients. We're losing credibility. Later, I learned from a former colleague, someone who had quietly moved on, to another firm, that Madison Clark, the HR director who had smiled at me while sliding my severance papers across the table, had stepped down to pursue other opportunities. Mr. Ellis had been reassigned to a non-client-facing role after several major clients specifically requested he not be involved in their accounts. Internal morale was so low that half the senior creative team had resigned within 2 months. Projects were stalling. BrightPath's largest client had pulled their $1 million contract without warning, all of it happening quietly, naturally, inevitably, like a slow-moving current eroding the foundation they had thought was unshakable. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't post cryptic quotes on social media. I didn't call former co-workers to whisper, "I told you so." I simply kept building my new life. One client, one project, one honest, meaningful connection at a time. Because real success isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving to yourself that their failure to see your worth never defined you. Every time I heard another story about BrightPath's struggles, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. Not because they had fallen, but because I had survived. Because, in choosing their comfort over my loyalty, they had planted the seeds of their own unraveling. Because the truth, the quiet, undeniable truth, always finds its way to the surface. No shouting required. No grand gestures needed. Just time. And patience. And the quiet, steady river of consequence. It's funny how, sometimes, the things you think will break you turn out to be the things that save you. Losing my job at BrightPath wasn't just a career setback. It was a moment that cracked open everything I thought I knew about loyalty, about success, about my own worth. And in the space where those old beliefs shattered, something new grew. Something stronger. Something steadier. Today, I work with clients who don't just see me as a tool for deliverables, they see me as a partner, someone whose voice matters, someone whose time is respected. I no longer chase validation from titles or applause or carefully worded performance reviews. I measure my success in quieter ways now. The relief in a client's voice when a project lands perfectly. The pride of mentoring a young designer who was once ready to quit. The peace of knowing I can walk away from any table where I'm not valued, without apology. This year, on my birthday, there were no emails summoning me into conference rooms. No cold severance papers, no silent goodbyes. Instead, there was laughter. Phone calls from people who remembered, not because a calendar app reminded them, but because they cared. There was a small gathering at a cozy restaurant downtown. Friends. Family. A new team that feels more like community than competition. There was a simple chocolate cake with slightly crooked frosting, and the words scrawled across it made me blink back tears. To new beginnings. I thought about that younger version of myself. The one who walked out of BrightPath's glass doors carrying a cardboard box and a broken heart. I wish I could go back and tell her, "You're not disposable. You're not invisible. You're not alone." I wish I could tell her that being let go on her birthday wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of the chapter where she finally chose herself. Looking back, I realize now, loyalty isn't measured in years served. It's measured in how people treat you when it costs them something to do it. It's measured in the small moments, the ones that reveal whether your value was ever truly seen. BrightPath failed that measure. But I didn't. I showed up. I gave my best. And when it mattered most, I walked away with my dignity intact. If you're ever standing in a conference room like I did, hearing polite lies dressed up as business decisions, please remember, your worth isn't up for negotiation, your loyalty isn't a weakness, and your story isn't over. It's just about to get better than you ever imagined. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you, the moment that feels like the final blow, is just the clearing of the path for something truer, something freer, something that finally feels like yours. As for me, I'll take the lessons. I'll keep the memories, but I'll never again confuse a company's needs with my own value. And when I blow out the candles this year, I know exactly what I'll wish for. Not revenge, not recognition, just the strength to keep choosing myself, again and again. No matter who forgets to. Because at the end of the day, that's the kind of loyalty that matters most. The one you give to yourself. If you've ever given your heart to a place that didn't see your worth, know this, you're not alone, and you deserve better. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more true stories about strength, resilience, and finding your way back to yourself.